Now, like I mentioned at the beginning, one of the ways that we worship the Lord is through our questions. When we hold our questions and confusions and uncertainties up to the light of God's Word, He is glorified and the darkness is chased away. Searching the Scriptures to understand who God is, what He is like, what He wants for us and from us, is an act of worship. Every time we open up His Word to learn from what He has revealed, that is an act of worship, whether we've ever thought of it that way or not. And that is the act of worship that we want to do together now. Over the coming weeks, we are diving deep into one of the topics that you guys asked for us to explore together. We are talking about why we believe Christianity is true. This is going to be one of the longer Bible study series that we do because this is just such a big topic. If you've been here at Mount Zion for quite a while, then you know we have touched on this in kind of smaller scale ways in the past. We've done some short sermon series and other things like that, breaking down some of the reasons why we believe Christianity rather than this other faith over here or this other one over here or this other one over here. But over the coming weeks and months, we're going to dive deeper than we've ever dived before. Maybe too deep. We'll see. Into why we believe what we believe. But as I've mentioned throughout this series, ever since we kind of relaunched our Wednesday night services, this is a Bible study and Q&A session, which means that if one of the things that we are talking about doesn't make sense to you, you can stop me at any time and ask me about it. You can ask any question that you have so long as it is on topic. So if we're talking about something over here, please don't ask me how to fix the chain on your bike. We can talk about that later, right? But you can ask any question so long as it is on topic. And so we're going to pick it up exactly where we left off in last week's session. Let's dive straight in. As just a little bit of recap, we started off several weeks ago asking, out of all the religions in the world, why should we believe this one? Why, out of the roughly 3,000 religions in the world, should we believe this one? Why should you be in a mosque or in a church right now instead of a mosque? I got ahead of myself, right? Why should you be in a church right now rather than a synagogue, rather than a Hindu place of worship, and on and on and on? Why, out of all the religions in the world, should we believe this one? In fact, why should we believe any religion? Is it even possible to know anything about the spiritual world, the religious world? And if it is, then how can we tell which spiritual claims are true and which ones are not? How can we figure out which of the approximately 3,000 religions that originated in some way with someone somewhere saying, I have discovered something new about the God of the universe? How can we tell which of those approximately 3,000 are actually trustworthy? or picking it up there? Because the Bible answers that question. How can we tell which spiritual claims are true? By saying, investigate. Remember this from last week? The God of the Bible commands us to investigate spiritual claims to discover which ones are true and which ones are not. We're going to talk more about that in depth next week, but what we want to talk about this week is the way our culture answers that question. Because the way that our culture answers that question, if you are living in America in 2026, is you can't. Right? The way our culture answers the question, how can we tell which spiritual claims are true? Which religious claims are true? Is you cannot determine which ones are true and which ones are false. It says, since you can't be absolutely certain about something you can't see or feel or taste or touch, like spirituality, right? Therefore, you can't confidently say this religion is true, but that one is false, right? Our culture says there is no way to determine whether any person's religion is true or false. It's just true for them. Well, that's true for them. This is true for him. That's true for her. This is true for these people. That's true for those people. And as a result, our culture says every worldview is equally valid. It says all religions are equally valid. Our culture says if this belief system helps you, then it must be true for you. If that one helps them, it must be true for them. Ever heard some version of this before? According to a recent study by the Barna Research Group, 58% of teenagers and 62% of adults said that they believe that many religions can lead to eternal life, that there is no one true religion. That's very, very similar to what a famous philosopher named Ramakrishna once said. I'm going to quote the whole thing. I wrote a little summary of it over here. One God, many paths. He said, God has made different religions to suit different aspirations, times, and countries. But a path is by no means God himself. This philosopher Ramakrishna, you maybe have heard some version of that before, but he basically said there may be one God or many gods, but regardless of what's actually true, the God or gods who are out there have given different religions, different spiritualities, different philosophies, different worldviews to every different generation, every different nation, every different people group, based on what they needed, based on what would help them. He said, the religions and spiritualities that God has given to the people back in the ancient world, those were true for them because they were helpful for them. The ones that he's given to us today in different parts of the world, they're true for us because they're helpful for us. He says, every different religion is just a different path to the same thing. Now, Ramakrishna was a Hindu philosopher from the early 20th century. Most of us are not Hindu philosophers from the early 20th century, but that is basically the mindset of our culture today, isn't it? And to be really clear, I really like this idea. Don't you? Like, you don't have to have contempt for things that are not true. This sounds really good. It feels really good to believe something along these lines. I would like to believe that every different religion is just an equally valid path to the same thing. Wouldn't you like to believe that? Wouldn't that make your life easier? So, why am I obviously working my way up to saying that's not true? It's because there's a handful of reasons why this doesn't work. Here's the big picture of why all religions are equally valid. One God, many paths, does not work. And it actually has nothing directly to do with the Bible. There are basically two issues. The first is something called the law of non-contradiction. Ever heard of the law of non-contradiction before? No, it's been a while since you had to take freshman philosophy class, right? But the law of non-contradiction is maybe one of the only things that basically everybody in basically every different field all throughout the world agrees on. There's like maybe 5 things, and this is one of them. What is the law of non-contradiction? Anybody want to just take a guess? Or anybody remember? Nobody's going to laugh at you if it's a little bit off. You're not at school, it's not a test. The law of non-contradiction is that 2 things cannot be true at the same time if they directly contradict each other. 2 things that directly contradict each other cannot both be true at the same time. Case in point, imagine that a crime was committed right outside the church, and the people who committed the crime jumped into a getaway car and sped away before the police could get here. So then the police came and they were taking a bunch of witness statements from all of us, right? Let's say that person number 1 goes up to the police and gives their statement. They said, okay, they got into a red getaway car and they sped away. Okay. Then witness number 2 comes up and gives their statement to the police and says they got into a blue getaway car and they sped away. We now have a problem, right? What color was the getaway car? There's a couple of options. Option number 1 is that the getaway car was red and the person who said it was blue was wrong. Option number 2 is that the car was blue and the person who said it was red was wrong. Option number 3 is that the car was not red and it was not blue. Maybe both of them were colorblind. Like me, right? My clothes never match because I don't know what colors do and don't match, right? I gotta label things. I'm like, okay, the shirt that has this on it matches these. I have no idea if I succeeded today or not. But maybe they were both colorblind. Maybe the car was a totally different color and they both saw the car incorrectly because of that. Or maybe it was kind of dark out, right? Wednesday night church happens right about as it's starting to get a little bit darker. So maybe there wasn't quite enough light. And so it was easy to mistake the color of the vehicle. But in either case, either one of them was right or neither of them were right. They cannot both have been right. Sometimes people will say, well, actually, wait, what if they were both right? Because when he looked at it, it just looked red to him. And when she looked at it, it looked blue to her. It's like, okay, that doesn't mean they were both right. That just means that it looked right. Come on. That just means they felt like they were right. Same kind of thing. Are the lights on or are they off here in the sanctuary? They are on, right? It's not a trick question. A light can be on or it can be off. It cannot be on and off at the same time because those two things are contradictory. Now, a light can be on and a light can be blue. That just means that a blue light is on. Blue does not contradict on, does it? Off contradicts on. Same thing. That door, is it open or is it closed? Okay, yes, the door is open. Yeah, the door can be open or it can be closed, but it cannot be open and closed. Now, if it was halfway open, then what is it? Is it open or closed? It is still open, right? It may not be all the way open, but it is still open. It is not closed because closed contradicts open. A door can be open and it can be terrible, right? That describes a lot of doors because terrible does not contradict open. It can be open and it can be brown because brown does not contradict open. It can be open and it can be made of glass because made of glass does not contradict open. Closed contradicts open. I know this is weirdly philosophical, right? It's not always like this. But that's the law of non-contradiction. Two things that contradict each other cannot be true at the same time. And that's really important because absolutely everything, from science to mathematics to engineering to medicine to law, everything hinges on this basic foundation that gives order to everything else. Without the law of non-contradiction, we could not learn anything. Know what I'm talking about? We couldn't know anything. We couldn't be certain about anything because science itself hinges entirely on observing a bunch of things for a really long time over years and years and years and years all across the world and noticing, okay, every time you throw a thing up in the air, it eventually falls back down. That has never not happened. So gravity, without the law of non-contradiction, we can't really be sure that it's going to come back down next time. Because there's no order, no consistency. That applies to everything else. And so we understand in every other part of life, two things that contradict each other cannot both be true. Until we get to religion. And then suddenly, we start acting like the law of non-contradiction is bigotry. We start acting like the law of non-contradiction is narrow-minded. What am I talking about? Let's imagine that there were like three guys just like sitting at a bar. And these three guys practice three different religions. Guy number one practices a religion that says there is only one God. Guy number two practices a religion that says there are millions of gods. Guy number three practices a religion that says there is no God. Can all three of those guys be right at the same time? If guy number one is right, then there is only one God. If there is only one God, then there are not millions of gods. If guy number two is right, then there are millions of gods. And if there are millions of gods, there is not only one God. Guy number two is going to say, no, I think you're right. I just think there's more gods than you think. And he's like, okay, that means I'm wrong. If there are millions of gods, then there is definitely at least one, but there's not only one. If guy number 3 is right, then there is no God. And that means what? That means guy number 1 is wrong because there's not even one God. Guy number 2 is wrong because there's definitely not millions of gods. All 3 of these guys could be wrong, but they can't all be right. Either one of them is right and the other 2 are wrong, or all of them are wrong. You know, maybe there's like 17 gods, which means there's not only one, and there's not millions, and there's not 0. So, right, all of them could be wrong, but all of them cannot be right. Because all 3 of these guys, spiritual claims, religious beliefs, contradict each other. It's no different than what color the getaway car is, whether the door is open or closed, whether the light's off or on. That's issue number 1. The law of non-contradiction means all religions cannot be equally valid. They could all be false, but they cannot all be true. Here's issue number 2. In every other part of life, we understand that there are things where there is only one right answer. We get in every other part of life that sometimes there are things where there is only one right answer. Case in point, you are in a burning building. Which door do you need to go through if you want to live? Still not a trick question. The exit, yeah. Only way to not die in a burning building is to go out the door that gets you out of the burning building, right? So over there is the exit. Over there is the door to the kitchen. Now, if you're hungry and the building's not on fire, the kitchen is a great door to go through. If the building is on fire and you want to not also be on fire, that is not a good door to go through, right? The only door that will get you out of a burning building is the exit door. Every other door will lead to your death. Wait. What if you have a coworker in the burning building where you guys both work who very sincerely believes the door to the kitchen will miraculously lead out of the building? What happens if he goes through the kitchen door? He goes deeper into the burning building, and he dies in the burning building. The fire that is blazing through the building is real. It does not care what you believe. It does not care how sincerely you believe it. Your belief that the kitchen door will magically take you outside will not make the kitchen door magically take you outside. The only door that will safely take you out of the building is the exit. We understand that when we're talking about a building that's on fire. Same thing is true for diabetes treatment. I think I've used this example before, but I think it's funny, so I'm going to use it again. Maybe you disagree, I don't know. But if you have severe diabetes and you go to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, the treatment I'm prescribing for you is I want you to eat a gallon bag of sugar every single day within 30 minutes. What's going to happen? Yeah, you won't have diabetes anymore after a relatively short time. You won't have anything anymore. In fact, all of your problems will be over, technically, right? Because you'll be dead. You will no longer be in debt. You'll no longer whatever else, right? Yeah. Your diabetes is going to get astronomically worse. If you eat a gallon bag of sugar every single day as part of your treatment, because that objectively does not work to help diabetes. In fact, that objectively makes diabetes worse. What does your doctor need to prescribe you? He needs to prescribe you probably insulin, water intake, proper diet, exercise to the extent that you're able, other things along those lines. There are things that objectively help with diabetes, and there are things that objectively make it worse. It does not matter how sincerely you believe that eating a gallon bag of sugar every day will improve your diabetes symptoms. Your sincere belief that the gallon bag of sugar will help your diabetes is not going to make it help your diabetes. Diabetes is real. It does not care what you believe. It does not care how sincere your beliefs are. The only thing that will help is doing the things that actually objectively help. We understand this when it comes to the medical field. We understand it when it comes to getting out of a burning building. Nobody is going to call you narrow-minded or arrogant or intolerant or bigoted for saying, hey, my man, get away from the kitchen door, let's go to the exit. Hey, why don't you put down that gallon bag? Where did you get a gallon bag of sugar? Who had that? Why do you have that? Let's go to the pharmacy and get you some insulin. Let's go to a doctor who won't prescribe you a gallon bag of sugar. Nobody is going to call you intolerant or narrow-minded for that, because we understand in every other part of life that there are actually a lot of things where there is only one right answer. Until we get to religion and spirituality, suddenly our culture says there cannot be only one right answer. That would be narrow-minded. There must be many paths that are equally valid. And so when Jesus says things like what he says in John 14:6, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And he says, no one comes to the Father except through me. Our culture says, yeah, Jesus was a good guy, but that cannot possibly be true. But why not? Pulling off our don't hurt anybody's feelings caps and instead putting on our thinking caps. Why can't that be true? This is all really kind of set up for the next thing that we're going to talk about next week. Because while our culture says, how can we tell which spiritual claims are true? You can't. They're all equally valid. What Christianity says in response to how can we tell which spiritual claims are true, the way Christianity answers that question is investigate. Look into it. Look into the claims the Christian faith makes and see what the evidence says. That's what we're going to spend this whole series doing. That's all the time we're going to have for our Bible study And we're going to go ahead and transition into a time of praying for each other and with each other.